of the night, and we're going to talk a little bit about one of our elite position coaches in Mike Reed. We mentioned him earlier on in the offseason, if you will, when his name was dropped for a coordinator position and a couple coordinator positions. But his name has been linked loosely, as of right now at least, with the BC job, possibly becoming their head coach. Will he get an interview? If he does get an interview, will he accept that interview? Will he accept the offer if he gets one? One does not know. I, for one, would hate to see Mike Reed go. There would never be a good time for a coach of Mike Reed's caliber to walk away from your program, especially when you see what this guy's done, not only on the recruiting trail by bringing in the talent, but look what he does with the talent once it gets on campus and once he gets it on the field and how it produces. And look at all the guys that he has produced, elite level guys at Clemson. So would hate to see him go. There's no great time to lose a coach like him, but you couldn't really pick a worse time. We're right up against spring practice starting. If he were to leave, it would be, I think the choices to replace him would be somewhat limited just because of the part of the college football calendar that we're currently find ourselves in. Most coaches are already locked in, through the 2024 season. They've made their moves. Most of the coaching moves have already been made. So that could make it a bit more complicated. But what are your thoughts on his name being linked to this Boston College job? Do you think there's any validity to it? Is it a possibility? And if he did get offered, let's say he gets the interview and does get offered, do you think he would leave for that job?
Yeah, this has been it's kind of something that's kind of cropped up, over the past 24 hours. I think Brandon Marcello put out a tweet, I think yesterday or when it was around the time when it was announced that Jeff Hafley was going to be taking the defensive coordinator job with the Packers. He put out a list of about 8 names, and Mike Reed was on there. So I'll say this: I never want to, I never want to just say definitively what is or isn't going to happen. But from what I understand, there's not a whole lot to this. I think really the reason he was listed was, I think he's a name that makes a lot of sense because obviously he played at Boston College, has connections there, he coached there. But beyond that, knowing how Mike Reed feels about his current position at Clemson and kind of the jobs that he has turned down otherwise, from what I understand, there's not a whole lot to this. I don't expect him to go anywhere. I think he's really happy what he's doing right now at Clemson. I think he really likes the kids that he has here, and he's very committed to the guys that he brought in here. And obviously he's committed to Dabo. He's stuck around for a very, very long time. He's been here since 2013 now.
Mm-hmm.
Just long time. That's about as at this point, as long as Brent Venables was here. He's kind of a guy I see as kind of locked in right now. I think it would take a really, really big opportunity to kind of sway him. But yeah, I think he's a name that makes a lot of sense for Boston College to contact. If I was the athletic director, I think it's Blake James at Boston College. If I was the athletic director up there, he would certainly be among the first I would call, just because he's a guy that he hasn't had a head coaching job before. And he's a guy that's well respected in the industry, phenomenal recruiter. He would make a lot of sense. He would kind of be wouldn't be an out of the box hire, but it would be a guy that would bring a lot of excitement just because of his recruiting prowess. It's kind of like Syracuse. It was like almost exactly like Syracuse hiring Fran Brown from Georgia, in terms of just elite defensive back coach, elite recruiter, guy that has won at a high level at the program he was at, and can bring some of that. and that recruiting prowess, to a program that struggles to recruit. So I think it would make a lot of sense. But yeah, I don't expect Mike Reed to. I don't expect him to take the job or that really to go much farther than maybe he gets a phone call. But that's just me.
Yeah, I'm pretty much aligned with everything you just said about Mike Reed and the BC job. Obviously, as you mentioned, it makes perfect sense for Boston College to call up Mike Reed. I would absolutely call him in a minute, and I would offer him the job and hope that he takes it. Um, but looking at it from a Clemson perspective, obviously, selfishly, I don't want him to go anywhere. I would wish him well if he decided to take the head coach position, and hope that he did well for them and the program. When they're not playing Clemson, but I don't really see it happening. At least I'm hoping it's not going to happen. But we'll kind of see. They're kind of in a tough position too with Jeff Hafley kind of bolting for the Green Bay Packers coordinator position kind of late in the cycle. Just like I got finished talking about how it'd be difficult if Mike Reed left. Imagine being Boston College right now and losing your head coach. I mean, did that surprise you to see him leave, especially this late into the cycle?
Yeah, a little bit, but not a little bit, but in the same time, no, because I know that Jeff Hafley is a guy that, I mean, first and foremost, he's a guy that loves coaching football. And, I think, a lot of the quotes coming out about kind of his reasoning was, just there's not enough time to coach ball anymore. Most of my job is recruiting my own roster and recruiting transfers and fundraising, NIL, and doing all of that. I don't really have a whole lot of time to, coach football. And so it's kind of that trend of guys, really well-respected coaches, seeing kind of what the state of the game is right now in college football, and seeing the NFL as a better option, even if you're taking a demotion in a way, because he's going from a head coaching job to being a coordinator, but he prefers that than what's going on right now. I think, and Jay mentioned, Jay in the comment section, makes a great point. His job security was certainly in question heading into this year. So that certainly could have played a factor. But, I do think there are going to be coaches that decide, this isn't for me anymore. This is something that a lot of the big names in the sport have talked about. Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, Dabo Sweeney, they've all talked about, the way the game is now is turning some people away, and that's kind of the reality of where it is.
Yeah.
But kind of to steer it back towards Mike Reed, I don't really expect him to. It wouldn't surprise me if he got a phone call, but I don't expect him to entertain it very much. I think he's really comfortable with where he's at right now, and I think if he were to go somewhere, I feel like he would need a much better opportunity than Boston College, and that's no shade to them, but I just with the amount of jobs that you've turned down, probably jobs that we never even found out about that he's turned down. I don't see why that wouldn't be the one, unless he really has a deep love for his alma mater. But I don't get like the I don't get like the Brent Venables vibes from him. And then plus with Brent Venables, it was Oklahoma, a college football blue blood, that he also happened to, coach at for a very, very, very long time.
Right.
So I expect him to continue to be the cornerbacks coach at Clemson for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I don't think he's going anywhere. And couldn't be happier to have him stay at Clemson right where he is, doing what he's doing. But to your point about Hafley and some of the other college football coaches, kind of being turned off by the new version of college football, and how most of them have talked about how unsustainable it is, and I think you're seeing some results of that with coaches. Some coaches going to the NFL, some coaches just stepping away altogether. It's definitely having an effect. I think more so than some people want to give credence to. But hopefully college football can steer their way out of this and figure it out and get to a much more sustainable model in the very near future, because I think it's definitely needed. But that's a whole nother can of worms that we can open up on a
And there's a
separate.
lot going on right now as far as that's concerned with the Tennessee situation and
Yeah,
all
the
that.
Tennessee, the NIL and the NCAA getting into all these, spats with Florida and Tennessee and Florida State and all these schools about NIL violations, and it's a huge mess, man. It's getting messy in college football. You can clearly see the NCAA has zero authority over the sport anymore,
Nope.
even though they continue to pretend like they have some semblance of authority. Um, it's an interesting time to be a college football fan. Um, I'd be lying if I said that I liked everything, all the changes that happen, and all the things that are going on in college football. But it kind of is what it is at this point. I'm just hoping and looking forward to the point where we get to the somewhat of the end state that college football is eventually going to head to.
Yeah.
But
I just
we got
want
to go
everything
through.
we just want everything to settle down.
Yeah,
And
settle down.
just been
All
nonstop.
all these growing pains to be over. Let's get through
Yeah.
this growth spurt and get to a more recognizable version of college football. So I think we're heading to it slowly but surely.
Yeah.
I think eventually we'll get there, but it kind of is what it is. You got to kind of bide your time, and some of these coaches are just gonna decide, like you said, it's not for them. But I think Dabo Sweeney runs his program a little bit differently than a lot of coaches out there. Not speaking ill of any coaches out there, but Dabo has a unique way of running things. Some people like it, some people don't. But the ones on his coaching staff tend to think that it's a little bit better environment for families and guys to have some work-life balance and things like that. So, and I think that speaks to why he's been able to keep a lot of his coaching staff together for so many years. Before they up and leave. Brent Venables had an opportunity to become a head coach at a bunch of different schools before he bolted for Oklahoma. And honestly, if Oklahoma wouldn't have came open, I think Brent Venables would still be the defensive coordinator at
Absolutely.
Clemson right now. I think Oklahoma was the one job that he was willing to leave Clemson for, and I don't think there were, there might have not been another job, but certainly not very many other ones that he would have left Clemson for. So, and you see a guy like, Matt Luke come out of, his hiatus or his retirement or, his brief vacation, if you will, and come to a place like Clemson. And he talked about, how different it was there and how comfortable he was coming out of his kind of break for a place like Clemson. So, it's a weird place in college football right now, but here's to hoping that it gets better quick, fast, and in a hurry.
Yeah, because it's also just it's exhausting hearing about it all the time too. You get kind of the fatigue. It's kind of like you hear about just the whenever it was transfer portal season. I remember when the 1 year transfer rule was done away with, and it was just constant news. This person entered the portal. Who's doing this? Who's doing that? Yeah. And it's just it's a never ending cycle. I already put myself through that when by following recruiting. I don't want to do that on a million other different fronts, but now I think we're kind of getting into the big, it's going to be ugly and all of that, and things are going to be crazy for a little while. But I think I think college football will be okay at the end of it. What does it look like? We'll see.